In 2021, the French Bishops' Conference published a report. More than 216,000 children have been victims of sexual violence in Catholic institutions in France since 1950. In Germany, studies revealed that between 1946 and 2014, almost 4,000 minors were abused by clergy. The perpetrators were often simply reassigned. Files disappeared. Victims were silenced. Welcome back to Three Spiritual Leaders. One question. Today, we turn to a topic that has made headlines for decades and caused suffering for centuries: child sexual abuse. We are not speaking of isolated incidents, but of firmly entrenched structures of looking away, decades of silence, cover-ups, and victims left alone. Abuse is not a tragedy of our time. It is a tragedy of human history. Already in ancient cultures, in the monasteries of the Middle Ages, in the missionary schools of modern times, wherever children were dependent and defenseless, there were perpetrators. What is new is not the crime. What is new is that we are listening. Let's begin where trust should be deepest, and where betrayal hurts the most: in religious institutions. Jesus, you of course know about this.
Whoever harms children and still speaks in God's name dishonors his own message. The silence was not neutrality, it was complicity.
In 2018, international media reported on abuse cases in Tibetan monasteries. Novices spoke of violence, humiliation, and sexual abuse by teachers. The perpetrators were not held accountable. Criticism was portrayed as an attack on the religion. How do you see this, Buddha?
Teachings built on silence and fear do not lead to liberation, but to even more suffering. A community that does not acknowledge suffering loses its path.
In Pakistan and Bangladesh, children's rights organizations regularly report abuse in Quran schools. Victims speak of sexual assaults by teachers. Complaints rarely lead to consequences. Often, families remain silent for fear of stigma. How did you experience this, Mohammed?
Those who cover up guilt increase injustice. The protection of children is not negotiable. It is a duty.
Many who protected perpetrators were not perpetrators themselves. They were parents, colleagues, friends, convinced that such a thing was impossible, because they themselves could not imagine that a person could have sexual desire for children. And they preferred to suppress this reality rather than acknowledge it. They wanted to believe that a good teacher, a popular priest, a successful coach would never harm children. But such doubt does not protect the truth. It protects the perpetrator.
Yes, and whoever looks away because they do not want to imagine evil makes evil invisible and lets it grow.
Ignorance is not neutrality. If you refuse to look, you become part of the cover that hides suffering.
The first protection must always be for the children, not the names of perpetrators, not the reputation of the community.
Sometimes people talk about victims without letting them speak for themselves. A voice, as many could report. I remained silent because no one wanted to listen. And when I spoke, no one believed me. It was easier to forget me than to face the truth.
Those who remain silent when a victim speaks double the pain.
Listening is the first step toward healing.
And acting is the second.
Abuse is not the problem of a single religion. It is a problem of power, dependency, and lack of protection. It also happens where no prayer is spoken. In families, in sports halls, in schools, in children's homes. Many think of severe acts, but victims often report that it began long before, with a touch that was unnecessary, with a closeness that left an uneasy feeling, with a boundary quietly crossed.
Abuse begins where a child is no longer safe, in the body, in the mind, or in the heart. Not every touch is abuse, but every touch must happen with respect. If a touch serves not the teaching but one's own desire, it is a betrayal of trust.
An assault does not begin with the act, but with the intention. When someone seeks closeness to satisfy their own desires, they have already crossed the boundary. That is why clear rules are needed. No locked doors, no unnecessary touching, transparency as protection.
Abuse begins where mindfulness ends. Support, guidance, physical closeness. These are not wrong when they are pure, but when they happen secretly, unnecessarily, or without warning, they already carry the seed of abuse.
Some say, in the past the world was fine. Such things didn't happen.
Even in my time there were children who were defenseless. That's why I warned, whoever leads one of these little ones astray, it would be better for them to have a millstone hung around their neck and be drowned in the sea. That was true then, and it is true today.
In my time, children were often seen as property. Abuse was not always a hidden scandal. Sometimes it was open in society. That is why my words brought rules and responsibility.
Even in ancient India, children were abused in households, schools, palaces. The pain was the same as today. Healing begins in every era with acknowledging the suffering.
One case that moved many did not take place in a church or school, but on the football field. In England in the 70s, 80s and 90s, hundreds of boys were harmed by a youth coach. Parents entrusted him with their children, but the clubs did not take the children's side.
Why is the pattern always the same, whether religion, school or sport?
Because many institutions protect first what brings them prestige, titles, victories, success. Some clubs kept their coaches because they won games. They protected the trophy, not the children. In Nepal, children were placed in orphanages, supposedly to give them a better life. But many were abused there, even by people who came as helpers. How do you explain, Buddha, that places that promise safety can become places of suffering?
A place is only as safe as the mindfulness of the people who run it. When help is given out of self-interest, it is not pure. Abuse in a house that promises protection is a double deception, a deception of the children and a deception of one's own conscience. Muhammad. Many people do not understand how children can even be seen as the target of sexual desire. How do you explain that there are people who see desire in children?
It is often the distortion of desire, a misuse of trust and power. Children are not seen as people but as a projection surface. That is not love, not closeness. It is violence. That is why communities must set clear boundaries and remove those from their ranks who cross them.
And here it is often not only the individual who fails, but also the community. Because anyone who looks away, even though they suspect something, protects the perpetrator. True responsibility means listening when a child speaks out and acting before even more suffering occurs.
3 religions, 3 eras, and the same truth. Abuse knows no time, no culture, no border. It happens where power remains unchecked, and silence is stronger than courage. To all who are listening, if you are affected or know someone who needs help, please reach out to counseling services. You are not alone. And if you have a question for our 3 spiritual leaders, feel free to share it with us via social media. Perhaps it will become part of a future show. Until the next episode of 3 Spiritual Leaders, 1 question. Every Sunday.